Welcome to A Woman's Brew, where women talk about beer. In today's episode, we are asking, do you know where your beer is made? With CAMRA's latest report. I'm Joanne, and this is Tori.
Hello, hello.
And we're two beer-loving women on a mission to get more people drinking and talking about great beer. Come join us. All right, we've got a bit of a, I think it's been a while since we've done a, serious topic.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a serious one today, guys.
It's very serious. Very, very serious.
So we thought it would be a good idea to talk about, actually, I don't know if this is a good idea, but we're gonna find out, right?
I think we thought it was a good idea at the time, and then we started organising this.
Now we're not sure.
Maybe not a good idea.
I think the angle we're going to go with. So we're going to look at CAMRA's latest report, beer in the UK. I think the angle we want to go for with this is we want to kind of demystify it, talk about it, try and kind of unpick it today, and then kind of talk about how we feel about it, our thoughts on it.
These are all personal opinions.
All personal opinions.
Just 100% personal opinions. I'm just gonna. I'm not coming with facts or
thoughts. We have thoughts on this.
Yeah.
That we would like to share. So, because this is a bit of a info heavy one, rather if you're watching the video, we're not paying attention to each other as much as normal. We got notes, guys. So
I got notes.
We're going backwards and forwards between different screens and notes and things that we've got here. So
and I do want to say from the offset as well. Yeah. That's this is again, personal opinions, thoughts. There's no. We are just sometimes it's like playing devil's advocate just for the sake of dipping into it. Yeah,
I don't think the opinions we have about it are ours alone. I think other people may share these thoughts. If they don't, we can have a healthy debate about it. Do we want to talk about what beer we're drinking? Do you want to say what beer you're drinking?
Yeah, we can do. I am drinking a black IPA called Crafty Fox from Hook Norton Brewery.
Oh,
because I thought I'd try to go with it being CAMRA, and I thought I'd try to go for a little bit more of a
Norton.
Yeah, I went to their brewery. I've got a glass. I went to their. I tried to go to their brewery.
Yeah.
But when I went, because I was camping nearby, and it was absolutely heaving, so I couldn't actually get it. We tried to get a table. We had dogs, so we couldn't go on a brewery tour or anything like that. The cart and the horses were cool as hell, but we couldn't get a table because it was so busy. So we had to go down the road to their. There was a pub that's at the start of the road that also is supplied by them. So we had to go down there and sit outside and drink the beer there. But I went into the shop and I got some beers to go, and this was one of them. And I thought this felt like an appropriate time to drink it. I've got a secondary beer that I'll take it out if I finish this one, but I thought this one should last me a bit. So
yeah.
What about you?
I am drinking. It means nothing to me, which is a Vienna lager from Westerham.
That's such a harsh name for this topic. I know that's probably not intentional.
No,
but
it wasn't until I was saying it that I was like, "Oh, that's not the reason that I picked this."
You went in it means not. It was like you realised once you started reading it. It means nothing to me. How callous.
So, but it means nothing to me. A Vienna lager, because that song that quote is from is Vienna. But there's a lot of talk about lager in this report, so I thought lagers were appropriate today.
That feels fair.
Yeah, and it is very nice Vienna lager, actually. All right, so CAMRA. If you are not sure who CAMRA are, well, we can do a little explanation of that. CAMRA stands for the Campaign for Real Ale, and from their website, they are a consumer organisation founded in 1971. Representing beer drinkers and pub goers across the UK. Their vision is to have quality real ale, cider and perry, and thriving pubs in every community. Our mission is to promote and advocate 1. The production, availability and consumption of quality real ale, cider and perry. 2, pubs and clubs as social centres and part of the UK's cultural heritage. 3, the benefits of responsible social drinking. They achieve this by supporting and encouraging the beer and pubs trade by running beer festivals, lobbying government for change, running numerous awards, and developing bespoke pub finders and guides. So, they are probably in a good place to have a report like this and talk about such things. I think there's a lot of mixed opinion about CAMRA. I think that would be fair to say.
That is fair. I don't think that's that controversial.
No, I don't think that's.
I don't think that's the
that's
controversial
fair,
part
right?
at the start, because I do think
especially it's like we are primarily craft beer drinkers. I enjoy a cask ale. I enjoy a traditional ale. But so in my area where I am, most of like our beer festivals were CAMRA beer festivals. Like that is quite different from a craft beer festival. You get different type of beer available, you get different type of clientele at them. Back in the day when I was first getting into beer, that's what was available. Often, found myself ignored at the bar because I wasn't a man. Again, this is fair to say. I think they have done a lot of work on inclusivity. I don't know if they're quite there yet. Like I had a CAMRA membership for a little bit because it got me into the festivals for free.
I didn't know that.
Yes, well, like back in the day, I had a CAMRA membership, but I cancelled it because I didn't feel like the campaign was speaking for me. Like I didn't feel like it shared my views. As I got further into my craft beer journey. And I think one of the things that has always stood out for me, again, I think it depends on the area. I think it depends on the CAMRA section or group that you're working with. So this isn't true of everywhere. Like I've met up with like the young CAMRA group in Nottingham. They were really lovely. Like had some really lovely chats with them in the past. But I know that like my local group were very staunch. Real ale is the way. Keg beer is. Every keg beer is rubbish. And I've had this conversation.
I can see that though with where you're located
where
as
I
well,
am in the
just
world.
like what part of the country.
Yeah.
Whereas I think I've probably
we're a little bit of a craft beer
lucky.
desert down here. Yeah, like there's a few places have popped up over time, but we are very much traditional real ale, like that kind of thing. A couple of the festivals down here had started to kind of do some work with that and had things called discovery zones where they did do like it was a comparison. My favorite actually one of my favorite times was I knew that this discovery zone was going to be there, and like I went up to have my go, and they had the same beer. Wonson Brewery near us had done the same beer on cask and on keg, and they just gave you the 2 cups and they went work out which one's which. And it was so
That's
funny standing there, and I was like, I'm gonna have a go, see if I can work it out. And like I stood there and there was this guy doing it, and he was like, that one is definitely the keg. It's way more gassy. It's not as good. That is the keg. And the brewer stood there and he's like, that's the cask one. And it was so interesting seeing these people's minds blown, because in their minds, they thought this thing, like they had this box around this thing, and it wasn't right. And it wasn't true. When they actually blind tasted it, it wasn't true. But I think, we're going to be kind. I think CAMRA is working on that. I think they are trying, especially I think with this report, they're kind of moving away from that very staunch real ale is the only way, and they have been broadening out and including keg beers in their festivals and in the things that they do. So there has. I
do think there's like a Venn diagram. I think that like if you were to think like from a stereotypical point of view, there's like a Venn diagram where you have like the real ale like CAMRA members, and then on the other side you have like the really hardcore craft beer fanboys.
Never the twain shall meet.
Well, I think I'm in the middle of the Venn diagram in the sense of like I kind of I don't take either too serious. Like I don't take either too seriously. Obviously, I take beer more serious. Like I know beer is just beer. Obviously, I probably take beer more seriously than some other people, but I don't have like one loyalty
Yeah.
or another. I just kind of go, what makes sense to me, what speaks to my values, and what tastes good.
What is good beer?
Yeah, like what is
No
good
matter
beer
how
and what
it's
speaks to
dispensed.
my values and ethics. And
Yeah.
I do think like I to be fair, I feel like I've got on both sides of that Venn diagram. Like I've seen people that are staunchly one way or staunchly another way, and to me, both types of people are unbearable. And it's like a varying degree. It is a varying degree because, like, when you have somebody that is like, I will only ever have this, like, equally, I will only ever have this one. This I can never have a beer outside of on keg. I can't have. It's not good if it's not the freshest of the fresh.
Right.
And it's like that. And, like, it has to be the hypest of the hype.
I am craft beer. It's got to be highly hopped. I will not drink lager. Like, this, there are both extremes,
it's got to be the most interesting thing in the world. Like it can never be just a really
American beers
executed.
are the best.
Yeah,
all other beers are shit. Like I've had all of these arguments, and I'm just like, if it tastes good, I will drink it.
When I went to Greece a good few years ago now, I asked the question to people on social media of like, do you have any craft beer recommendations? Like, and I was doing research and everything and to try to find some craft beer spots, and like literally every single craft beer person told me, well, you won't find good craft beer in Greece because they're so far behind everyone in terms of like, I found the same thing with Japan. Not so much now. I think people are acknowledging that Japan's gotten better as well, but the same thing with Japan. It's like, oh, they're so far behind. And like, would I say that their market is as mature in the same way? But it's a different market.
Yeah.
But the beer was like, that's not to say that they are so far behind that it's primitive.
Yeah.
But that's just, I'm trying to be fair to say that as much as we've just said about, there is that old school mindset that they are getting better at. There is also a mindset shift that needs to happen on the craft beer side as well. Yeah. And I will say, I've not gone to a CAMRA Beer Festival in a while because there's been things that weren't as appealing to me based on other people's experience.
Our ones have stopped happening. So we had a couple that were like, we had the Kent Beer Festival and we had the Thanet Easter Beer Festival, which were both quite large. And it is, a lot of it is run by volunteers, and they just couldn't, like, it wasn't making money enough. They couldn't get decent venues, and so they have had to stop them. So you got your pros and cons there. Like, people really wanted it, but it just wasn't viable.
I think the experiences that I've had, because maybe it's like, because you're in a more traditional part of the country. So I think like, I will say my experiences at CAMRA Beer Festivals, because when I first moved over here, even before I moved over here, when I came to visit, like we'd gone to Reading Beer and Cider Festival. At the time I was probably mainly drinking more cider than beer there as well. But like, I've got nothing but good memories. But that's maybe because like,
don't get me wrong, I've had some great times at there. I have equally had some times where I'm like,
but I think it's because when I've gone, it's never like when I was going to CAMRA festivals with the people that have that mind, like I've not been going as a person that's a real like nerd about beer, if that makes sense. Like I was going like, that was just it. That was the thing I was having at that place, but it wasn't. I spent so much more time and money playing the games because the games are fun. And that's like, I've just got music games and it's been a really good experience, but that's because I don't think I was with Rick, and I don't think I was going on my own trying to get attention at a bar. And I also think I'm really lucky in Berkshire because we've got really amazing. It all comes down to the branch you're in as well.
It comes
and the
down
mindsets
to the
of
branch.
Those people.
I think it really does.
And I do think like where we have the people in the Berkshire area and surrounding areas, like their mindsets have been like from the festivals I've gone to really positive. So I just thought I'd give the other side of the coin, which is also, like I've had fond memory.
It is also the place that I did my first beer judging because they always went, "You're a woman drinking beer," and I'm like, "Yes, I am." They're like, "Will you come and try some beers? We need a woman to do it," because they always came and grabbed me because apparently I was the only woman they saw drinking beer. So so like I got some good experiences out of it. Don't get me wrong, but equally, we like to share all of our experiences and let you know where we're at.
I think it's fair to be well rounded because I think if we were to only ever say, I think it's really easy to take the route of just I think if you look at, especially in the craft beer community, there's so much criticism that happens from CAMRA, and it does tend to fall around like old school mindsets and stuff. And I think we're trying to be well-rounded and say like, yes, that exists, but then there has also been shifts. Maybe they're not all the way there. Maybe some branches are more well-rounded than others and making more progress than others. But yeah, I don't think that's unfair to kind of acknowledge both sides of that as we get into it, because I think like already us talking about this, some people might be like, well, it's already really divisive because they already have a mindset where they are staunchly pro CAMRA or they are staunchly anti-CAMRA. And again, I do say I think sometimes extremes of both can be insufferable to talk to.
So we're specifically talking today about the Beer in the UK report, which recently came out. And so it represents itself as being written from a consumer point of view, not breweries. The report is covering the state of British beer, outlining the causes around the decline of British independent beer, which I thought was interesting, and what we can do to help pubs and boost independent British beer drinking. From the website, it has said, here's how we lost our point and how to win it back. It's kind of the strap line for the report. The target audience, according to the intro on the report, is consumers, brewers, publicans, stockists, the people who guide or make laws and monitor and regulate markets, as well as decision makers who have ability to impact choice, availability, and price of beer on the bar. That seems like a very wide audience. And I think that is evidence in the report if you read it. It's 28 pages?
Yeah, 28 pages.
28 pages. We'll put the link into the show notes.
We'll put it to the main page. And basically what happens is you go to a main page, and then at the top of it says like click here to access the full report. Yeah. And you want the full report. Yeah. There's no like short report. No. There's only that one. So I think it's only fair, because we can give our initial thoughts. Before we give initial thoughts, I think it's fair for people listening to cover just some terms that I think will be helpful if you're reading this report or when we're having conversations. So in terms of the definition that's given for independent brewery, as far as I'm aware, it's not spelled out in the article itself per se. It's just called independent brewery. But when I've been looking into it and trying to find in the background what they define as an independent brewery, they basically use the CEBA definition from the Indie Beer campaign. And so CEBA, who's a Society of Independent Brewers and Associates, they basically have said that independent breweries must be a manufacturer of beer and have their own brewing equipment, and or be an independent beer brand brewed and packaged at a qualifying brewery. I'm just giving very high levels, so I'm not reading all of it. Be a UK-based sole trader, partnership, limited liability partnership, or limited company that is permanently based in the UK and carries out a minimum of 75% of its total beer production in the UK. For those purposes, it does include Channel Islands and the Isle of Man. And then C, not be under the control or connected with any other entity operating within the UK brewing industry. So I think that's going to become a very important part of when we're talking about independent brewers for the sake of this report in particular. Then there's the definition of on-trade versus off-trade. So on-trade refers to places that are licensed to serve alcohol for consumption on the premises. So you want to think about restaurants, pubs, nightclubs, hotels, anything in that sphere. Off-trade is business selling for home consumption, so supermarkets, bottle shops. Those are online retailers, breweries directly. They can be considered off-trade. You've got your pub company, also called pubco. People might have heard this term, but then been like, what does that actually mean? So it's a property company that own public houses, so your pubs. So sometimes there can be, they could own a few. Sometimes there could be thousands. Like I think one of them referenced in the report was like, it could own 4,000 different locations of this chain. So an example of that is Green King. Stonegate was another one that was given as well. You've got a tied pub. So as in TIED, not TIDE. TIED. Sorry, I had to say to myself, did I say it right the first time? So that is a pub with a contractual obligation for where it buys its beer. You can have full or partial ties. there's line maintenance contracts, which is a contract for maintaining beer lines and the dispense equipment. So it can also include line cleaning, overall system checks. CAMRA's argued that these contracts can sometimes also be what influences which beers can and can't be served, which I'm sure we'll get into when we talk about this report. Another term, provenance. So that's the origins of a beer, including where beer is actually brewed, who owns the brand. Can also sometimes include what ingredients are used. There's this one was one, so they use so many in this report. There's a lot of different governmental bodies that are referenced and like lots of really official sounding things. And I think this is the one that's probably the most important out of all of them, which is CMA. That stands for Competition and Markets Authority. We can give a link to that if anyone's interested in some reading to keep you up at night for sure, because that's when you read it, it's very, very riveting stuff. They are the UK's competition regulator investigating markets where competition may not be working properly. So according to their website, on their actual website, it says, we promote competition and protect consumers with a clear end goal, economic growth and household prosperity. The CMA is a non-ministerial department. The only other thing that I think that's probably worth calling out is that they've mentioned a few times throughout the report, they're talking about like sort of the big four, these big four companies. It's repeatedly mentioned, and at one point it is called out and specified that it's AB InBev, Heineken, Carlsberg, Molson Coors. Obviously these aren't the only people by any means, but these are, when you see them say like the big four, if you're skimming it you might miss it, those are the big four.
Yeah.
So shall we get into some initial thoughts on this report before we do a deep dive into the actual elements of it?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first started reading it, I was like, ooh, it feels like CAMRA are aligning themselves with SIBA and their indie beer campaign, which I think is an interesting move for CAMRA. And I think it shows that they are trying to, like, it's time for them to shift their focus, right? They do need to be opening up to including all types of independent beer within the campaign, because pubs are not going to survive on one thing alone, not in the economic climate that we're in right now. Like, they do need to have that opportunity to have other things for people.
I think from my everywhere that I kind of saw this being shared by CAMRA on websites, I did see, actually it was interesting because SIBA has also shared, they've shared an article, so we can share this as well. I won't read through it, but they have shared that they said the independent brewers welcome CAMRA's call for fairness and transparency in the British beer market. So it does feel very much like they are aware that they're aligned. Like, I don't think that they're operating completely
I think
in silos, they are unaware of that. I think they are bridging that gap. And I think it's like CAMRA is coming at it from that angle. That is I'm working on the legislative piece on behalf of the pubs, whereas like SIBA's like, we are looking at it on behalf of the breweries. And then that kind of is harmonizing together. And I think a point that was made in some notes that we had were very much like, it's really hard because one kind of can't exist without the other. Reality is one can't really exist without the other, because you might be able to fix the legislation, but without the buy-in to get those to support the actual breweries on that side, that doesn't work, and vice versa. So it's really interesting that it actually took this long to get that collaboration, because it does feel like there's the two different mindsets completely.
Right. And I don't think this is a coincidence. Like, I think CAMRA and SIBA are talking to each other. Like, I have no proof of that, no confirmation anywhere that I can, be like, this is where they have said they are working together. But I think they are working together, which makes sense to me, because those two campaigns run in parallel, and I think that is a good thing. And I think they are talking to one another to make this happen.
I think that's what happens when you get so fed up. It's like, that's the thing, is you've got to join forces. If you want to, your voice will be heard if it's even louder. And if you can rally two very separate groups of people together under the same banner, that's even better. But what I saw that's getting shared everywhere,
alliances are being formed.
Alliances are being formed, and we're not against it. everywhere that it was being shared, though, it was being promoted as like a "you're being lied to" was like kind of the headline on it. And I'm not gonna lie though, like I wasn't surprised by what was when I was seeing this of like "you're being lied to," the very blunt terminology of it, I was like, oh, what have I been lied to about? And then when I actually read it, I don't know about you, keen to hear your thought, but I wasn't surprised by what was in the report. No. I didn't feel I was, not that I didn't feel like I was being lied to. I felt like, I don't know how anybody, I don't want to say this as like, because obviously if you're not in the know,
there might be,
and you're not paying attention, that's fair. But I think if you are very much in the beer realm, I would be surprised if there was a high percentage of people that were lied to, as in like, yes, they're telling you it's one thing, but like a lot of us tend to do that research and know that. So like I didn't feel that I was deceived. I might be being lied to, but I didn't feel deceived, if that makes sense.
I'm interested to think who they think is being, like, who are these people that you think are being lied to? Because I think when I first clicked on it, there was like a little game, and it was like, here are some breweries. Do you know if they're independent or not? And I was like, oh, let's. And obviously, I work in the beer industry, so I felt that I probably had a bit of an advantage.
I don't, and I also felt like it was,
went through it, and I was like, none of that was difficult, and it was like, and I was like, yeah, I do, like, so I think people that are into craft beer, into independent beer, know about beer, enjoy the nuances of beer, know this, like they know that that Beavertown isn't air quotes craft beer anymore, like they know they're owned by Heineken, they know that Cloudwater is still independent. Like some of the things that were in that quiz. Like, so I'm like, it's more, and this is what came up when, this is the same question I had when SIBA put out their indie beer campaign, and they were like,
yep.
Do people like it's you walk into a bar and it says it's craft, and then we asked people like, do you know that Camden Hills isn't craft? And people were shocked. And I'm like, who was shocked? Who are these people? And I think this is the same chunk of people that are being air quotes lied to. They're the same people that are going into a pub, don't necessarily know beer brands, and like are just going in for a drink, and they're looking at what's on the bar, and they're like, Camden Hills, that sounds interesting. Neck Oil, that sounds interesting. And they try it, and like, it's billed as craft beer. And then, they aren't in it enough to know that it's not craft beer. Those might be the people that are being lied to. Same, who are these people? Like, we're aware, and it's a little bit of a joke, that some people think that Madri is actually Spanish. Like, it was actually made in Spain. And, it's not. It never has been. It is just branded that way. That one, I think, is like, there might be more people that thought it was a premium import lager. Maybe there were more people that thought that, but I don't think the people that thought that or that are drinking that beer are the same people. That they're not the independent brewery supporters. They're not the people that are very into their beer, and so it's this chunk of people. And my question is, do they care? Is it important to them?
That's how I felt as well. Like, so I shared that sentiment when we went through the indie beer report as well, the indie beer campaign, and it's difficult because I do think there probably are people that think Madri's made in Spain, and no shame if that is a person. Like, if you're listening to that's you. I think my feeling is I don't think that maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's a higher percentage than I would guess, but I would guess it's a lower percentage of people that are drinking it because specifically it was made in Spain, right, and they think it's a premium Spanish independent beer. Like, I don't think I don't think a high percentage of people, I think they probably think it's a Spanish beer.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's what the driving force behind them getting that beer is. And I don't think that finding out some of these beers are actually owned by a big brewery, or they're actually made on the continent instead of outside of the country, it's mainland, like they think it's mainland Europe, but it's actually made down the road. And I don't know if those people, if they knew that it wasn't, would they change their habits? I'm not convinced that
I don't think they
would. And I think part of this is why, like, at the offset, I was like, I don't want to be, at the start, I was like, I just want to, like, preface this with some, you know, sometimes I'll play devil's advocate, sometimes maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but I think I feel really, I don't even know the right word. I think I feel really deflated might be the right word, because I feel like there's so many of these reports that have been coming out over the last few years, and I just question, like, that it feels like there's so, and it's obviously easier when you're not the one that's doing the research and when you're not the one that's out and about. It's so easy to fix the world from your sofa.
Right.
It's so much easier to fix the world here behind a microphone drinking a beer than it is the reality of being out there. But I think I get really disheartened is maybe the right word, because I'm like, there's so many people talking about what the problems are, what's causing this problem. But I'm like, well, and I know that, you know, for CAMRA, for example, they go and they lobby, and that is like such good. I'm not a political person. My brain's not politically minded. I just couldn't. All the statistics in this, I was like, my brain hurts. But I think it's like so hard, because you see a report come out. We saw it with De Lattis as well when it came to you know, women and their visibility in beer and everything. It's like you get a report, and then everyone gets outraged. It's a cycle. Everyone gets outraged, but then it's talked about in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what to do to actually make that change. And then it gets to be another report that comes out that studies have been done, and it's all the same stuff that we've heard. And I think maybe that's some of my frustration about when I read this report, is like, it didn't feel like it was anything new to me. It felt like all the stuff that everyone's complaining about again and again and again. And like, I'm not suggesting that I know how to fix it. I'm not suggesting that this was a problem with the report by any means. This is not directed at CAMRA. This is not directed at the report. It's directed at my frustration that it just feels like we're trying to fix the problem with drinkers' habits, but we're not. Are we really understanding the drinkers' habits? Are we just getting annoyed in an echo chamber? Like, I think there's a bit of nuance about pub drinking and pub drinking culture that maybe is glossed over in some of all of this as well.
It is written in very emotive language. I found it slightly aggressive. I don't know if that was necessary. I feel like that might put some people off. I think they do have a way to find a solution. And that is something that I think has been talked about for a very long time, but nothing ever gets done about it, is this tied pubs thing, where, you know, if it's owned by Green King, there is only a certain only a certain portfolio of beers that can be in that pub. Even if it's only partly tied, if the lines are cleaned by Carlsberg, you can only put, you know, there'll be, I think it is Carlsberg is one of the ones. They clean the lines. You can only put certain beers through those lines because they are the ones that are cleaning it.
I think Heineken's one of those.
Heineken's one of them as well, I think. Yeah. But like, that is the core of what is stopping independent brewers from getting into more pubs and getting in front of more people, which is why since COVID it's been so important for our independent brewers to have their own route to market, to have their own tap rooms and their own ways to do that, because they can't get into the traditional ways. And then your Joe Blogs that is walking into the pub and just buying whatever's there, they're not trying anything new because it can't get in there. And that is the real problem. And so the lobbying for the CMA to actually do something about that, I think, is what really needs to be focused on. I don't know if the report does that enough, but that is what we should be looking at.
I actually didn't have to give the other side of it as well, because I feel like we can be well balanced in this. You mentioned that you felt that like the terminology was really aggressive. Like, yeah, I didn't. I was okay with it because I understand like the way that the language was used. So like, for example, you're right. It was very emotive. Like, it's the inside of the first part of like the page one. It was very much like, if this makes you angry, contact us if you want to get involved. And, you know, you're being lied to, the very, very harsh terminology around that. But like for me, I was okay with it because I feel like people should get mad. People should get mad about this. They should feel emotional about it. And
but I don't think they should be mad that Madri's not made in Spain. They
no,
should be mad that, and I think that's the angle they've gone at. They're like, your beer is not made where you think it is.
yes,
I don't care about that. What you should be mad about is that your independent brewers that you do want to support cannot get into the market. That's what you should be mad about.
And that's what I think, exactly that, because like I'm not upset or off put by the language, because I think you should be angry, but it's the way that it's phrased, like you said, how it's shaped in that regard. I think actually the harder thing for me was it felt very like, even though it was saying like it's for consumers but also all these other people as well, it did feel like it was written in a way that was more geared. 28 pages, and I'm like, so you've already captured my attention because I'm a craft beer drinker. I'm not the one that's fooled by this. I'm not the one that's been lied to. If your aim is to try to capture people that have been fooled by this and should care about where their beer is coming from, they're not going to read 28 pages, and they're not going to read 28 pages that reads a little bit more heavy. It was hard to read. For me, I will say that I don't have the best attention span at the best of times, and so like I was really trying to focus in, and there were some parts I had to read like 3 times because I was like this, and not being in the industry, not being a very heavy political part. I was
in the industry. I have more of an understanding of these things than you do, and I still was like, wait, I need to read what are they trying to say here? Like there were several times, like some of the, there's a bunch of charts in it. You know, someone has done an awful lot of work and done a lot of research. I liked the charts.
I'm visual,
right? But there were times where I was like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, it's I don't think your regular consumer, who is the person that has been lied to, air quotes, is going to be able to necessarily make heads or tails of all of this report.
Yes. I think it's not as palatable. And then some of the stuff, even for me, we'll get into it like kind of when we go into the sections and stuff like that as well. But like some of it as well did feel a little bit more like, what is the relevance to putting this in the report? But then I kind of started thinking to myself, maybe it's just because I don't work in the industry. Maybe it's because I didn't have the full attention span because it was a really hard read. So maybe I skimmed apart. I tried to read it as fully as I could and give it all my attention. I spent probably an hour really going through it and making notes and stuff like that. I used my whole work lunch break to do it. And I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe I've just missed the part. Like, where's the relevance? Again, we'll talk about it in a minute, but I'm like, where's the relevance for this? Like, why has this come into play? I don't really understand. Thinking, well, it must be me, it must be that. And then I spoke to you, I'm like, oh, I didn't understand why this included. You're like, I didn't either. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I'm going, when you're in isolation, you're reading it alone. I was like, I find the topic is interesting to look at, but it's really taking away from the messaging that I think needs to be delivered. And again, it's really easy to say that from my office chair behind a microphone, drinking a beer.
Yeah.
But I think you're right with what you said about what the focus should be and where I don't think it was enough.
Yeah. And I think there are important messages in this report. And I think that's why we have chosen to talk about it today. Yes, we've got some negative things to say about it, but I think there are some important things in it. And we want to take this opportunity to demystify those and give people the chance to think about it, because I think there are some important things in it. It was just a bit hard to get to them.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing that at a high level really kind of had me confused was because obviously CAMRA's campaign for Real Ale. They never really defined if they were talking about cask only, keg only, all beer, all independent brews, just pubs, just what's served and served. So I think if you came in with no preconceived notion of CAMRA, you probably would read this in the way it was intended. For me, because I had a preconceived understanding of what CAMRA historically has done, and I've never seen them vocally make a change from that until this report. My understanding is from reading this report and kind of chatting to you about it to be like, can I just validate this is right? That they are covering all British independent breweries, all kinds of beer. Like it's not limited to just cask or keg. And that's obviously a very different thing than what they normally would be talking about and promoting.
Yeah.
So, and there were some elements that I do think, when they talked about things that were more geared towards pub, we'll probably talk about this in a bit anyways, but I do feel like there were some nuances, which is what made it really hard to know what they were talking about, because they would reference something about a pub and then I'd be like, yeah, but in a non-pub setting, I'm not sure that this would be, there's a context about this, a stereotypical pub setting, that maybe it's not landing. And so I was getting confused of like, so what kind of beer are we talking about here? So that was kind of in the back of my mind. I'm really interested to know if anybody else started off reading it assuming it was about just traditional or real ale, and then kind of realizing no, they've not specified that, so it can't be that. But now I'm confused.
It felt to me like this is CAMRA's opportunity to kind of rebrand.
Yeah. And I'm fully for it.
I think this is good for them. Like, I think this is a good turn for them. It's a good direction for them to go in. I think they probably could have done with like a little maybe statement that made that a bit more clear. Because I feel like I've gleaned that from the report. I might be wrong. Maybe they're just gonna be like, no, we are still real ale only. Like, it doesn't feel like it from this report, but it probably could have done with a little.
I assumed it
proviso.
I assumed it, but then there were elements that had me being like, but is it? And then I was like, but I think it is, but is it? And then when I spoke to you and you were like, that's what I assumed it to be. So I was like, oh, okay. But I think, again, at the start of things, they could have done with a little bit of a glossary of term, because they did, what I will say is they did try to explain things as and when it came up, but sometimes they would talk about something and then explain it after. And I think it would have been really useful to have a little bit of like a headline of setting the scene of what are the key this is, again, it's about accessibility to the reader. So you are assuming a basic level of understanding, investment and involvement from the person that is reading that report. But I would argue that the person that you need to read that report, and the person you need to understand that message, and the person it needs to resonate with to make the changes you need, may not have that basic level of understanding that you're hoping for, or you've potentially, I'd argue, maybe got your target audience wrong of who you think it's for versus who it's really for. But that's I'll get off my soapbox now. We can actually dive deeper like into the report. We're going to get
back onto our soapboxes as we go along. But so we've got how many have we got? 1, 2, 3 sections in here that we've kind of CAMRA's proposed solution, and then what we think it means in plain English. So if the British brewing industry is to reach its potential for growth, the UK beer market must be freed up of smaller independent producers to have fair access to it, and incentives must be found to develop distinctive British beers for export. This requires a market investigation from the CMA. So what that in plain English means is free up the beer market for independent breweries and ask the CMA to investigate exactly what I was saying about how, like, the independent breweries are not being able to get into the pubs because of various different things. The CMA needs to look into this and make it easier for independent creators to get into these spaces. And then it will stop the market being dominated by a handful of large companies, those big four. Secondly, the routine deception. I feel like this is a really interesting way that they worded it. The routine deception of consumers must stop. Beer sold in the UK should clearly name the company that owns the brand and the place where it is brewed through an industry code of conduct, or failing that, new labelling legislation. So this was a really interesting chunk that I had thoughts on. So, there's a section where they say that, like, the report goes into like breweries that contract brew, who, they might brew themselves, but they need more beer and they don't have the capacity for it, so they get someone else to brew it. I think as well, we also now have people starting breweries and they can't afford their own kit. They have recipes, but they contract someone out. They get, another company. There are quite a few independent breweries who are contract brewing for other breweries, some of the bigger ones. And so you will start your brewery, but you don't have equipment. Someone else will brew it for you, but it's your recipe. That is contract brewing. There's also cuckoo brewing, where
fig leaf brewing, which
no,
is
I'm gonna
I
talk
found
about that because I was like, that is a made up term.
I wrote new term. I wrote that's a new
Yes.
term for me, but I went, this sounds very
Yes.
similar to some of the other things.
It's not. So cuckoo brewing is where you go and use somebody else's kit to brew your stuff. And so, so there are different models. CAMRA then brought in this term, and I had to go. I was just like, I've never heard that term before.
Oh yeah, where did it come from? I literally wrote new term to me, fig leaf brewer. What?
I think they've made it
contract.
So they use this term, fig leaf brewing. It isn't standard industry term. It's a phrase that CAMRA uses in the report to describe one particular type of brewery business model. So fig leaf brewers are companies that brew a very small portion of their own beers while having most of their range brewed elsewhere, but still present themselves primarily as a brewery. So why do they use the term fig leaf? The phrase comes from the expression fig leaf, meaning something that provides minimal cover or disguise.
Okay.
So in CAMRA's usage, it is believed that it means the company has just enough brewing of its own to say it is a brewery, but that small amount acts as a fig leaf, covering the fact that the majority of its beers are contract brewed elsewhere.
But yeah, but where does that and that's where, like, I was reading it and going, that just sounds like contract brewing.
Right.
And I think that they're thinking of contract brewing from the perspective of, I think, these big breweries buying up other breweries and letting them kind of operate as their own little arms, but they're still being controlled by the big brewery. And like, we're going to brew it out of this location. It's all going to come out of this location. But I just view it, I guess maybe this is where it comes into play of like being in the craft beer world. When I think of contract brewing, I think exactly what you said of like somebody needs more capacity than what they physically have, or they don't have the space at the moment, so they are getting somebody else to help. And I know that contract brewing can look like a lot of different things, because I know that there's quite a close, when it's like cuckoo brewing and stuff as well, there can be quite a close, very thin line between them as well, because I've seen where it's been contract brewed, and I've had conversations with people that have contract brewed, been involved in that, and I've said like, how does that work? And it's been very like, oh well, when we are first getting that recipe shared with that place, like I will go and I will make sure there's quality assurance. We will make sure that we are happy with the product that's coming out, and then once we feel comfortable that that brewery understands our recipe, understands what we're trying to do, then we will leave them on their own to continue to brew it. But there is a level of quality assurance that's still happening by the brewery, and it's not like a lower standard. I would say, I know that you were like concerned about that element of things being defined of who's brewing it and where. I don't mind that transparency. I don't mind the idea of the transparency of saying like X brewery brewed contractually at Y location. I think it will be really obvious when somebody says I'm brewing at, and it's like owned by fill in the blank huge brewery, brewed at fill in the blank location. Like I do think it will become very apparent to the people it needs to become apparent to when it is contract brewing, because it's a capacity requirement, and when it's being brewed there because it's easier to ship it out and not care about the quality.
I don't think it will, though. It feels to me like when SIBA did their indie beer campaign, there was right at the beginning, they were like, oh, if you don't own a brew kit, you're not an independent brewer.
Yep.
And there are small breweries that I know that cannot, they are a brewery, they cannot afford their own kit yet. They have their recipes, they're getting someone else to brew it for them. They were there considered not independent breweries.
Yep.
And I feel like, right, and that's nonsense. This feels like it dangerously skirts that line again. And I don't think that's the problem. And we shouldn't be making these small breweries who have, in this economic climate, I'm going to keep saying economic climate this episode,
these trying times,
in this economic climate, if a business has found a way to continue or build their business in a way that it's, it's still their recipes, they shouldn't be penalised for that. And I think there will, I think we're going down a road where it could be that wasn't brewed at you haven't got a brewery, wasn't brewed at your brewery, you're not a real brewery. Like that's where, and I know that the intention is to catch out these investment firms who are buying air quotes brands. They close down the entire brewery, and yet Wild Beer Co, there is still beer with that name on. It's not made by Wild Beer Co. It is a brand that is now being made by somebody else. And it's to catch things like that. And I understand that, but I feel like it is going to then damage smaller breweries. That's why it's concerning to me.
I think for me, that's not the slippery, like there's slippery slope elements. For me, that's not the slippery slope element, because if anything, I think that like I've seen places where I've looked at a beer. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I've seen a beer that was contract brewed somewhere else, brewery I hadn't heard of, and I've gone, oh, where is that? Like I look into it, I go, where is that? And I've looked it up and I've gone, oh, that's interesting. I've never tried their beer before. And it's actually caused me to maybe find a brewery that I wouldn't have found or have tried, because there was another niche brewery that's contract brewing out of them that I'd found out about the niche brewery from somebody else. And then when I look at who they're contract brewing at, I'm like, oh, I've not really known that. I mean, that's not the norm, because I think normally when you're contract brewing, it's probably out of some place that is more well known. To me, again, we can agree to disagree on that. For me, that's not the problem. The slippery slope for me comes on page 19. They say, a company that does not brew beer should not refer to itself as a brewery or portray itself in marketing materials to be a beer producer.
Yeah.
So like that, while I agree with that in principle, it's a slippery slope, because that is what bleeds into that, being clear about where it's brewed and who's brewing it. But that could be misused. I don't think that calling out what the brewery name is versus where it's being brewed is necessarily the problem in itself, because that transparency to me isn't the problem. It's how that definition of, I don't mind the black and white definition of who's actually brewing it and all that. It's that definition of a company that doesn't brew beer shouldn't refer to itself as a brewery. That's the slippery slope element for me, not calling out, I just can't afford my own brew kit yet, but the recipe is mine. Because I would translate a company that does not brew beer as in like, well, you've made that recipe. So to me, I consider like, you might not physically be there brewing, you might rely on somebody else, but like, did you brew the original recipe? Did you go there and help them brew the original recipe? If you've never brewed a beer a day in your life and you've just made a recipe and given it to somebody else, then I guess I could see the argument of like, you've called yourself a brewery, but you're having someone else do it, but you've never tried brewing a beer a day in your life. But that doesn't tend to be the case most of the time. So I can see how that could be abused and taken to mean, well, if you don't physically get hands-on and it's not your brewery and it's not your kit, which I don't think is the right thing to do. And I also have concerns about where they said any beer that is existing brand with minimal or no changes should state the name on the base beer on the label, because in my opinion, we can't even get the ingredients listed on the label.
Right. Where do they
How
think this
untidy.
space is? My thing is, where do you think the space is coming to put all this stuff on there? There isn't enough space for the stuff that's on there.
I wanted ingredients on pump, just clear tasting notes or something on pump clip, and I was told that's too much for a pump clip. Could never have that.
I also feel like we're getting into a point now where people need to diversify what they're brewing. We're trying to be more, like brewers are trying to be more efficient. There was a point there about like the base beer. What if you've got one base beer and then you've differentiated it? Like, how do they view that? Because that is something the breweries do. Does that require that you have to have named what the base beer is and then that it's been split into 3 different things? Because that is an efficient way of brewing. But are they like, there are nuances here that are being ignored.
And well, yeah, like what's economically feasible? What is like environmentally feasible? Because actually it's using less resources to do it that way. I am far less bothered about that element of it than like who actually owns the brewery and what their ethics are and how they're executing. Like, to me, that is more important. I mean, I was thinking about, like, as I was kind of going through this, about I wouldn't be against if there was a system of, let's just say, like, you could have a different, like a seal. Like, let's pick a seal, and let's say, like, if it's color A, you're a small to medium sized brewery, which could be anywhere from like 1 to however many people. If you're a different color of that seal, you're a medium to large, which is anywhere between X and Y. If you're a this color seal, you're somewhere from a large to quite high scale, which is XY, but still independently owned. And then if you're, D color, you are a globally owned, not privately owned brewery. I don't know if that would. It brings me back to, I don't know if the people that would make that this is needing to be geared towards would care. But I don't know what I'd find it interesting to have that on there, because I'd be like, oh, this is a really, really tough. Like, some breweries I think are bigger and they're actually not. And I think it'd be really interesting to have that definition of like small to medium, X to Y amount of staff. And then kind of being like, oh my God, this was brewed at a brewery that has under X amount of people. Like, that to me would be interesting. Whether or not that would make a difference to whether or not the people drinking global scale beers would care. I don't think it would make a difference. No. But I could see that being a good way to measure it, as opposed to trying to fit everything on a pump clip or a label.
Yeah. I logistically, I don't think that's feasible, because number of employees changes, when people, and you've got a bunch of cans that are now labeled and they're incorrect. Like, I like the idea, but I don't think it's logistically feasible.
But I would argue it's more feasible than them trying to put every single ingredient and every single thing on their cans, because you could say every year you go through, you report how many people you have, and that's what changes your status. Like, there are workarounds for that. I'm not saying that's the right thing, but what I'm saying is, like, I don't think that a business changing how many staff they have within like a certain percentage of guidance is like something that makes or breaks that being possible. I think all of it is a challenge to execute in general. I don't know what the right answer is, to be fair.
Well, I don't think there is one. I think that's the thing. Anyway, I just didn't like that section. Like, I don't think the way that they're going at that is the right way to do that. And also, they're making up fig leaf brewer. Like, that's something they've made up.
That I did think that was interesting. There was not on that topic in the book. There's one piece about where they were talking about why there was a decline, and it was on page 5 about international takeovers. It says, as a result, while original British beer styles such as pale ale, IPA, porter, stout, oak-aged beer, and barley wine are now revered around the world by craft beer drinkers, little of that beer is supplied by UK brewers. And I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. And I don't see statistics to back that up. But I think, not that I don't agree with it as in like there's not possible that it's not being supplied by more, but I think that's like a volume, not a percent. Like, I think it's more like, of course other people could brew these things because they have higher the US has higher number of breweries. So of course there could be more there. I don't know. I felt like when I read this is again what made me question, are we talking about just real ale, traditional ale? Like, what are we talking about here? Because I would be interested to see the statistics that statement is made from.
I mean, Brexit has done a real number on our export, because people like breweries that I knew of that were exporting a lot before Brexit now export nothing, because it's too complicated. The paperwork's too much. Like, things get stuck. Like, I can't even send a box of merchandise to one of my customers or one of my colleagues in Europe. It will take 3 weeks. There's stupid amounts of paperwork. Even though we'll tick the box to say we're paying for the customs, like give us all of the, we'll ring us, we'll do everything, just get it to the customer. They still ring the customer and ask them for stupid amounts of things, and it won't get there for at least 3 weeks. minimum if they don't lose it. Like, that's a box of merchandise. Imagine
insane,
beer.
Yeah.
You know, like that we literally have an entire team in the UK that just work on logistics and have had to do special courses to understand all of the customs and all of the ins and outs and hoops you've got to jump through to be able to get things in and out of Europe. It's
I don't envy that, because it's like, even just looking like in the US alone, like just different states, it's like, what? I guess that's fair, because I don't think I put it on the context of us shipping it extra. I think I was looking at it more of like from being inside, because obviously this was a lot of talking of like things are actually just made down the road. I think that's where my mindset was at, was like, I feel like we do make a lot of these things, but with that, fair enough, when I read it back, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. We do make it, we just can't get it out to other people.
And that's a fair point. And that is a fair point, and that is because of Brexit. I do, seeing as you brought up the US, so we've got, like, they're going about this big four and how that's causing all this problem with tied houses. It's interesting that in the US, after the Prohibition, they put in place the 3-tier system specifically to stop that, because of what was happening in the UK. Back after Prohibition, they saw this happening. And so if you don't know what the 3-tier system is, because I thought about this, so I thought I'd write down what it is so people understand. In the US, they have a system where everyone is broken down into producers, distributors, and retailers, and that regulates alcohol distribution. So, you know, like, producers have to send to distributors, and distributors have to send to retailers. You can't skip out the middleman, and that is supposed to prevent monopolies and aggressive sales tactics. Can't even say it. Aggressive sales tactics like tied houses. Like, so the US put something in place. It arguably, there are, you know, there has been some issues with it. Like, there are some variations where, you know, producers are not supposed to sell, but if people have their own tap rooms, they do end up doing it. Like, there are special dispensations, so that it is not perfect. But that system was specifically set up because of our tied houses issue. Like, you know, so that is a problem that I think, you know, I'll say it again, that's the root cause. That's what we really need to be looking at.
It was interesting as well, because the report, so it's talking about the beer declining, not because people don't like beer, but effectively it's declining because consumers are offered less real choice. Independent breweries struggle to reach drinkers. Multinational companies control much of the supply chain, and consumers often don't know who actually owns the brand they're buying from. And I just don't know if I agree with all of those things being the reason why it is declining. I think some of those are weighed more heavier than other things. So like that choice, they're saying that, you know, people think they have a lot of choice because they see a lot of different pump clips and fonts and brandings, but they're all behind the same multinational companies. And like, I think people think they're different. I'm not suggesting that that's not correct. I think they do think that they have more choice than they really have.
Yeah.
But I also think that if these people didn't like the taste of these things, they wouldn't be going to that pub to drink those off. Maybe I'm wrong, because I don't think, like, I think the pub is meant to, for me, I think it's, the mindset is like the pub is the social place first and foremost, and it's like whatever drinks are available at your local pub, that's what you're going to have. I do think they have a lot of choice, but I don't think that if they were to find out these are all actually the same companies, that those people would then be like, well, I'm not coming back here and drinking that beer. I'm going to have something else, because I think they do enjoy. I think that on some level, a lot of people do enjoy the taste of them, or else they wouldn't be drinking them.
Yeah. And the volumes that they are being drunk in, people must enjoy drinking them. Otherwise they wouldn't be drinking them. And I think, like, that whole section about pubs and about choice and about declining drinking, I think they have missed, there's definitely some parts they've missed about why drinking in the pub is declining. So they said about they said a little bit about COVID and how drinking habits had changed from them. I don't think, like, it felt like they were completely blaming it on COVID and stuff, and I was like, I don't think you can do that. Like, I think part of it is as well, we, you know, remote working as well. We are now all living further away. We're more spread out. People are not in a smaller location with a pub centrally. I live out in a village. We don't have a pub. I cannot walk to a place where I can sit and drink alcohol. I have to drive, or I have to drive to the train station and then get the train into Canterbury. Like it isn't like the old days where you could walk to the pub necessarily where everyone's living. Also, back in the day, people didn't mind a bit of drink driving. Not anymore.
It's wild, actually. Like, you know, what's really funny is when when we go to different places in the world, like the different attitudes around drink driving. It's so funny because, like, coming from the US and people are like 5 and drive, and then like coming over here and everyone's like,
absolutely
never
not.
shall. You might be able to get you might be able to get away with a pint. So like I would be like, have a half pint, sit on it for an hour, nurse it for an hour, have another half pint, nurse it for an hour, and then it's like, over the course of 2 hours, I've had 1 pint of beer, and then maybe I've driven, like, and still within the tolerance.
In Scotland, you have to have 0% alcohol in your system.
It's the same thing in Japan. Like, Japan's no tolerance policy. So, like, when we go to, like, a lot of these really beautiful places that I love visiting and drinking in, if we are driving, when we've rented cars, it's like, Rick is the driver. He is taking me there.
One for the team.
Taking one for the team because he knows how much I really enjoy it. He might have he might break the law there because he might have like a sip of what I'm drinking, and then it's like I will buy takeaways for us to have. But it's like I want to have one beer on tap. Like I'll be like, what's the nicest sounding beer? I want to have that on tap. And then I take the rest home, but it's no tolerance. And then you go to other places in the US where people are like just throwing them back, and then they're like, cool, see you later, gotta go now. And you're like,
I mean,
what?
I know there are still places like in rural areas where, you know, where people, I feel like we had this conversation at Little Earth Fest where there are, you know, rural areas where people are like, have 5 pints, getting on the tractor, you know, like... you know, it does happen, but technically, and I think for a majority of people, things are like, if it's too far away, you can't you cannot drive to it. You can't go and have a social evening drinking. Like, yes, you can get a taxi, but taxis are not cheap anymore, guys. So then, you know, where we're in a cost of living crisis, your entertainment money has got to spring for a taxi both ways. You know, all your beer, maybe your food, whatever else, like that.
Then I also think that really gets underplayed a lot of the time in these type of reports. So they do, like, they mention cost. Like, I'm not saying they don't mention cost, but they really underplay the fact that people maybe know what they're drinking, but financially that is what they can afford to drink, and they don't mind the taste. And I've always said that it also kind of comes down to like what your personal, what you care about, your personal preferences. Because when it comes to red wine, like I've used this example so many times with people, like when it comes to red wine, can I tell the difference between a bottle of red wine that's 10 pounds and a bottle of red wine that's like 20-30 pounds? Probably. Could I tell the difference between a 20-30 pound bottle of red wine and a 50 plus bottle of red wine? Probably not. When I start getting into the realms of 100 plus, can I tell the difference? I'm very confident I cannot. I think the higher up it goes in value, potentially the more lost it is on me. And it's the same thing, like Rick's had this conversation with me as well about, like, with coffee, like certain people are like, oh, I'm happy to drink one of the chains. I'm happy to drink chain coffee.
Instant.
This is what I like. Instant coffee. Yeah, I don't mind instant coffee.
Right.
I don't like, and that's cool. I can't drink instant coffee. I don't like it. But I'm not going to knock somebody else. So that is their I'm not going to yuck their yum. That's their situation. But some people genuinely will go, it doesn't matter to me if I've spent £3 on a tub of instant coffee, or it's lost on me if I spend £7 on an iced latte from a fancy coffee chain, or on the equipment to brew a really expensive high-end coffee. Like, that is just not something I'm getting the value out of. It's the cost to value difference. And I think sometimes with this, it's like, do they like the taste of this beer? Yeah. Could they drink something else? Probably. Will they care enough about that difference in the taste that justifies the difference in cost? Some people will. People like you and me will care.
Yeah.
But some people that are just going to the pub to socialize, the beer is just the added extra for them of that part of socialization, they aren't going to care.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about, you know, the next generations and how they're not drinking as much alcohol. But equally, they're drinking less, but they're drinking different quality.
Yeah.
So they're picking different things as well. Maybe they're not going to the pub because of all of these things. And they're buying, you know, beers from off trade to have at home. And so that makes a difference. Like, I think there's lots of factors that kind of got skimmed over or didn't get considered when they were doing that part of the report.
Yeah, I think to your point as well about like not having pubs near you, equally, I have plenty of pubs near me. I have plenty in walking distance. I can get to, trying to think off the top of my head, at least 4 pubs within probably a 15-20 minute walking distance. I can get to multiple pubs. I don't feel like any of those pubs are ones that I gel with. They are not my environment. They call out on page 20. It says many pubs offer low cost or free meals to people in need and have diversified to provide a range of community services such as cafes, post offices, hosting village defibrillators. So what I will say is my pub, the closest pub to me, does have a village defibrillator. Like, that's great. But I've not seen, and just because I've not seen it doesn't mean they don't exist, but like the community services, cafes, post office, like I don't see those from the place I'm, and I don't feel like the people that I have encountered, I'm sure they're all lovely people because it's not a judgment about who they are as people. I've not gone into these environments and felt comfortable and felt like I had found my tribe. So it's not a place that I would just go and hang out. It, you know, the decor doesn't, the decor's not one that and I say this as a person that can go hang out at a nearly empty storage unit in the middle of nowhere. But like these pubs haven't matched my vibe.
Big bench.
Dave. I'm team big bench. Like they're just that's what they're missing is the big bench. It's been those environments where there's nothing that's particularly wrong, but there's nothing that's really like cohesively all together made me feel like, oh, this is where I belong and this is my tribe and this is the only pub realistically that I can say has been a pub that I would literally go and just hang out at and have beers and meet up with people is the Nag's Head in Reading. Like I maintain, but then that's got really good craft beers. Mm-hmm. To me, the drink offering is part of what makes that experience, but I recognize that that's not for everybody. And then they also mentioned this part on page 16 about home. So they said home consumption lacks the social safeguards of drinking in community settings, such as pubs and members clubs, and the growth of off sales has been cited as a potential factor behind rises in alcohol-related harm, which was particularly noticeable during the UK's national lockdowns in response to the COVID pandemic. During that time, overall alcohol consumption fell marginally, but the reported rate of acute illness directly related to alcohol intoxication rose significantly. And I think like
I have that's probably with that.
That's probably correct, but there's a lot of other
factors.
There's a lot of other factors, but there's a lot of other things that come into play there.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it separately as well, where I was like, what they're not acknowledging as well, though, is like, as a female, I'm pro pubs. Like, I want to be so clear that I'm pro pubs, but to play devil's, I feel like when you focus on the one really positive side, and I appreciate CAMRA supporting of the pubs, and like I'm supportive of pubs. Even though I don't go to them myself, I still want them to be around because I know that it's just not my cup of tea. But my feeling was like, as a female, I know that if I drink in my house, I can't say 100 because nothing's ever 100% in life, but I know who's around me in my household, and I'm very comfortable that it is less than 1% of my drink being spiked in my own house. And if I was spiked in my own house, it's because of some freak situation where I got a beer somewhere else, took it home. Like, that's the reality of the situation. When I go out to a pub, I can't guarantee my drink won't get spiked, and that I don't have to take necessary precautions to keep myself safe from drink spiking, from various other things. That's just the one big thing that I think would come into play. And this notion that like, well, you can be moderated if you're at a pub versus drinking at home.
Yeah.
seen a lot of times, I've been in situations where like you're not always cut off. Like, I don't know if that is always happening. So I don't know if that's the reality. If anything, it's just because people aren't being sick at that pub. They're going home, and on the way home, they're getting sick. So I'm not suggesting that it's one or the other, but I think that there's a lack of acknowledgement around why some people may not go out as much. And that doesn't help the cause when you ignore it.
Yeah, and I felt like they're trying to say that drinking at home is why there's been a spike in drink-related illness. That is not the only factor. Like, just because you're drinking at home is not why. Like, they noted it as right. They noted it because of COVID. Like, we were in a global pandemic where we didn't know if we were ever going to be allowed out of our houses again. We didn't know if we'd ever see our families and our friends in person again. Like, you know, people were losing their jobs and things were closing down, and like the world was, you know, basically on fire. And yes, you shouldn't, but people were self-medicating with alcohol. It's not just because they had the drink at home. There were many other factors that were leading into people using alcohol in a bad way. Like, you can't just say it's, well, people were drinking at home.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Like, all the other factors that happened around that might be why people were over consuming and not moderating themselves. And I do think like it is a case of, as you pointed out as well, like you only have so, like, the world is still on fire, just in a very different way. And people are still facing financial challenges and job cuts, and it's a really tough job market. And therefore, like, it's more meaningful, I think, when people go and spend money outside of their home now. And some people are literally like, in order for me to be able to afford to have these treats, I have to drink at home. I can't like, when they go out, it's for a special occasion because that's really what they can afford. And I think, like, I don't have children, so I can't speak to this, but I do think as well, like, when you have kids, for example, we're in a really difficult time financially. So like, I can't even imagine the cost of trying to like get a sitter to go out to the pub and just to go out for like a few hours for a meal and everything else. So again, I do think that plays into why some people maybe don't go out as often, but also when they do go out, why they care less about, is this specialty beer from a renowned independent brew down the road, or is this a Madry that I think is
and why people are buying more from the supermarket where there are deals, because that's all the money they've got, so they're going to get the best out of that where they can.
I think there was an element, just to switch gear for a second, because I feel like I don't want to go without saying this as well. One thing that really threw me off in this report, and I'm so happy for other people that have read this to educate me, when they did the whole beer versus wine, there was a section that kind of just like outlined the decline of beer next to the incline of wine, and I kind of didn't understand its place in the report. Like, I understand kind of what it was trying to say. Like, I do think they were trying to make this comparison of like wine sort of diversified itself in that it made itself this luxurious product. It said, like, look, I'm from all over these places, and here's the different varieties of grapes. And like, we are starting now in craft beer scenes to do this with hops, but it's not on the level that wine has done it in terms of the general market. So like, I get that comparison, but like, they didn't touch upon cider, they didn't touch upon anything. It was literally just like wine versus beer, and I was like, but those feel like, that's not comparing apples to apples. They feel like two very different things, in that, like I said, I get the correlation, but like, I also think that when you buy a bottle of wine, now this is a generalization, this might not be true, but from my understanding, when you get a bottle of wine, 9 times out of 10, you're sharing that bottle of wine with somebody. Even a sharing bottle of beer, I do feel like a lot of times you're probably drinking that alone, whereas like, you're buying a bottle of wine to share with a group.
Controversial.
Well, yeah, I honestly think that like, it's more common. It's less common to share a bottle of sharing sized beer than it is to drink a bottle of wine to your face. And like, I think it is just like a very different setting people maybe think they're getting more for their money with a bottle of wine as well, because they think because it's been primed as this luxurious product, and it is like, well, we're all splitting it, so 4 of us might split a bottle of wine, or 2 of us might split a bottle of wine, so it's actually kind of half the cost of what it's saying on the label, and there's all these other things. But I just, maybe you felt differently, but I just kind of felt like I didn't really understand why they were talking about that comparison, and almost like they were saying that there was also a decline in beer cost because wine, and I was like,
I don't know if I fully agree with that. I mean, we've often talked about how beer is not seen as a luxury product, and it probably should be.
Yes,
but craft beer definitely should be, and wine has done that good job of making itself it's this luxury thing. I don't really know how that factored into this argument. Other than to show beer has gone down, wine's gone up. Okay,
but I think, like, all of that aside, like, yes, there is that relation around like one has given itself a luxury brand, the other one hasn't, but like I also don't think that one's the causation. I might be wrong, because obviously I'm not an expert, but I didn't feel like one was the causation of the other.
If we're going to go into that, why are we not talking about ready to drink cocktails? Because that's definitely done an incline. That's taken a share of beer, I think
that was my question as well, of like, why are we just focusing on wine versus beer? Because I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be leaving. What about
non-alcoholic beer?
I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be leaving that section of the report thinking, well, beer has gone down because wine has taken its market share.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I felt the narrative was. But I was like, but I don't know how do we know that that they were referencing, this goes back quite a few decades. So it's like, well, at that point in time, is all the options for beer that were available maybe not as flavorful, and people were just drinking beer because that was their option. And then when wine became this premium flavorful product, as they've described it, it's like, oh, I'm going to make that switch. But were those ever fully committed beer drinkers because they really loved the taste of beer, and now suddenly they're like, here's a new product? Or was it just like, I've made the switch because I actually enjoy this, and I didn't actually enjoy this other thing before? I'd also be interested to see the demographics of what the demographics of the people that were drinking the beer at that point in time, at that crossroads where beer started going down and wine started going up. Who are the people that went up with the wine? Who are the people that went down with the beer? That would be a really interesting thing to see, I think.
Yeah. I think the final section talks about like the UK's beer taxation, how it is abnormally high compared to other European countries, and especially compared to other European countries where beer is a traditional beverage. I think that's valid.
Yes.
We've talked a lot about things that we haven't liked about this report, but I think in a positive light, I'm going to hammer in again about how we need to sort out this tide system, and how the big four are stopping independent brewers from being able to get into the market, and then reviewing beer taxation is equally important. Now, since this has come out, obviously we've had a change prime minister here in the UK.
Oh yeah.
And apparently, I was having a quick look at it. Andy Burnham seems to be.
Is he going to review some
going in the right direction? CAMRA put out a statement saying that they were glad to see that he was going in the right direction. Like, end of statement. So that's a positive, that maybe that is already being looked at. So yay.
I think that's the thing, though, is like the most important parts. I think, again, I don't mean to be negative, but overall it's positive, because I think they are touching upon the really, really important stuff.
Yes.
So like what I feel they did, if we're going to talk about what they did really well, like they've given me things to look into in governmental legislation that I wouldn't have looked into before, that I actually was like, that's quite interesting. What is that? Let me have a look, and stuff like, what Scotland has done with pubs code. And they did a really great job of explaining the pub code ties and challenges that brings, because I knew that already, but I don't even think the average standard craft beer drinker might have known that. I only knew it because of other things that we have done. That's why I had that knowledge. Mm-hmm. But they've done that really well of explaining it in a very simplified way. And I think they've done a really good job at calling out the things that drinkers don't necessarily consider when they look at prices. So things like the issues that Brexit caused with importing, exporting beer, tax levels, all of
things
those
people
elements.
don't think
And
about.
I fully support them calling into question the rationale behind the taxation, because that's one thing that they were calling out. It's like, we want to understand the rationale behind it. And I think that is so important. I think what could have been changed was it took them 28 pages. Now, some of that was photos, some of that was reference. So fair enough. But it was a 28 pages long, dipping into things such as, now look at the decline of beer and the incline of wine. What I would have really loved was more simplified terminology in a consumer-friendly formatting that was really clear of like, here is the biggest problems, the pubco ties, the taxation, like all those elements, not just somebody's told you Madry was made in Spain, FYI it's not made in Spain.
Right.
Like that was the shock
and
value
an
that was
entire
meant
section where your beer is made in the UK was written in several different languages, which I didn't really understand the need for.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing of like where it fell a little bit short for me was like their messaging was exactly like what they were trying to tell you. The heart of it was really important, but it was surrounded by so much stuff that I was like, I know that there probably was reason behind it. There was probably some importance behind it, why they wanted to call it out. But I actually felt like for me, it took away from the importance of those other messages. And it's almost like, let's hook you in with the shock value. And then once we got you in that shock value, but like, I don't think as many people were shocked by it. So it ended up just being a bit like, what did we actually learn? What did we actually learn in this? They did mention, what I did think was missing was they did mention about free pubs and there only being a small percentage that could actually exert their freedoms. But like, for me, it wasn't really clear why.
Yeah,
unless I missed it. It wasn't.
No, I wanted them to
really
dig into that more.
I wanted them to explain why, because like, for example, if these pubcos weren't tied in, like the ones that aren't free, the actual pub, if they were completely free to get what they wanted without there being that heavy upcharge in what they're buying or who they're buying it from and everything, like would they stock independent beers more? Like would they, or would they go with what they know is tried and true? Would they go with what they know they can make a profit
because again, I think there's an argument to be made, like pubs have still got to survive.
Yes.
So they've still got to put things in on the bar that people want to buy. And if your local community wants to drink Madry, Foster's, Guinness, I might be mixing. I think I'm mixing ties now. But like, if those are the things that your consumer wants, that your customers want to buy, you're still going to have something like that on the bar to be able to make ends meet.
And I think that's where, like, I wish they dove into more explanation around the excerpt on the excerpt of the freedoms for the free pubs, because I'm questioning, like, they're saying that it was only I think it was like a fourth or something like that. It was a small percentage of people that were listed as free pubs that weren't actually exerting their freedoms, but it wasn't clear why. So it wasn't clear if it was like, was there something else that was holding them back from physically having their hands tied, or was it that financially they're having to make these choices for other reasons?
I also wondered if it was the line cleaning element.
Potentially. And then it's like, okay, well, I want to say that's an easy fix. It's not an easy fix, but in the sense of like easy fix, and like surely somebody like CAMRA could also help fund training for these places to be like, if your issue that's holding you back is the ability to clean your lines, and therefore you have to have certain people come in and they won't touch other lines, like, can you be put through a training course? Can these organizations help come in and be like, well, if that's your problem, let's fix that problem. How do we fix that problem? But that was something that was missing from me. And I also felt like it was missing genuinely, like, it says it's written by consumers, but I don't really understand if there were real conversations that were had, because like, yes, they referenced reports. It said it was written by consumers for consumers and other people. But I don't know how many of those conversations were like real conversation. Like some of the claims that were made that weren't like sourced as an article, I'm like, where did the basis of that statement come from? Like, is it an opinion or is it a fact? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, what's your overall feelings about this report?
Overall, I feel neutral, to be honest, because I think the points that they are acknowledging some key things that are problems, that are really, really difficult problems. And I know like CAMRA do a lot of really good work with the lobbying from the governmental aspect of it. I don't know if they do as like what I think would be interesting as well is like understanding more. So they do say like, this is what we're going to be, this is what we want to do. They ask the government, there's things of like, we're asking the government for X, Y, Z things. But like sometimes it's like a simplified approach of, are you actually getting involved in the introducing of pubs to independent brewers, or are you doing all the really heavy, difficult work? Like sometimes I think people over engineer. We do the same thing in tech. Like I work in tech and the same thing happens. If sometimes someone says, we have this whole push for automation. We want to automate everything and we want to do it to the best ability. So we over engineer it because we want it to be the fanciest way of doing something. But sometimes there's actually a more rudimentary, like so dead simple thing that you can implement so quickly that achieves the same thing less complexly. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the same thing with CAMRA, but like certain aspects, like could you take a step in, again, teaching people how to clean lines or helping to sort that out? Could you introduce brewers to the pub co-buyers? Maybe they're already doing it, but I couldn't find where those type of things were happening. Yeah. So putting things like that in the report or telling us as a consumer what I can do to help, because a lot of this was like, this is so above
and I don't feel
head. It's
like
above my pay grade.
At the end it didn't really tell me what I could do.
Yes, there was no call to action.
Yeah, like I think you said at the beginning it was just like you could join us, right? That's right at the beginning. I've read through all of this stuff, you got me fired up. There was nothing at the end that went, come join us, help us do this, do that, like, yeah, there was nothing that told me what my next step should be.
There needs to be a call to action, and I don't think that call to action should be like become a paid member of CAMRA. Like, I'm not saying that couldn't be,
because how much of my fee is going towards that lobbying or that doing that thing? Like a lot of it is going to other stuff, which is fine because that's what CAMRA is. But what can I as a person do?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, is maybe a lot of that is going to the lobbying and everything else. Yeah. But like, what can I do that doesn't require me to pay a fee, and that is something I can do reality in my day to day? Like, what are some simple call to actions that I can do and execute that don't involve me learning a whole new skill, getting involved? Like, maybe I don't have a lot of time to donate to the cause, but I am passionate about it. Like, what can I do? And it was missing a call to action on that. But I do think that overall, and I think the thing is, the reason I'm saying neutral is because I don't feel I personally learned anything new. There was no surprises to me. There were some interesting governmental things that I've now looked into, but there was nothing new about this for me. But they did touch upon core things. So
same. I feel in two minds about it. Like, yes, there are some strong things there that we all agree need to happen, and I think we've been saying that they need to happen for a long time. And yes, it's good that we've got into that point where we are maybe something's going to happen about it. Maybe we'll make enough noise to make something about it. But equally, there were points where I was like, I don't really like how you're talking about that. That doesn't feel inclusive. It doesn't feel how I see things. Maybe that was just me. And I got to the end of it and didn't know what I could do to make a difference.
It's cautiously optimistic is what I'd say about it, because I think it's going in the right direction.
Yes.
It's getting the right sentiment across. Like, for me, it was getting the right sentiment across, and like I understood that and I appreciated it. But I say cautiously optimistic because I feel like I'm already so, okay, I've heard this before. Like, is anything, and I want to believe that something's going to come off the back end of it, especially because it does look like they are sort of teaming up with SIBA, and I think that's great. I just feel so deflated that I just think, oh, here's another report with lots of information. Are we going to do anything? Are they going to do another report next year, and it's basically going to be the same thing? And it's like, is the like, and I do question sometimes, like, not just is the emphasis on the right thing, but like, again, it's bringing it back to, are they thinking too big sometimes? And it is literally, I think in order for this to go from neutral to like really good to me, I want to know what my call to action is, but I also want to understand what they're doing to educate the people that are not going to read this article.
Right. Those people that probably don't care that Madry's made down the road.
How are you going to get
how are you changing their mind?
The large percentage of people, what can we do to help? What they need to do is sell why they should want to drink independent. Right. So, but twofold.
How are you going to change their mind about drinking this beer that they actually don't care is it says it's this, but it's actually down. They've made us think it's this, but it's actually made down the road. How are you going to make them actually care about that and therefore not drink it so that action happens?
But equally, how are you also going to sell these pubs that have the ability to get independent beers on? How are you going to sell that to them over the cheaper beer options, number one? And how are you going to sell it to the government to actually care to do these things when actually they're probably profiting so much off of this? Because they're like, this report's targeted at decision makers that do this, this, and this. And I'm like, the decision makers are making so much money. Like, why would somebody that has this pub tied in, that is making money, that is going, you can't access this other wholesaler, you have to have our wholesaler that marks everything up? Why would they give up that? Like, why would they willingly give up? What, like, we have to be sold on, like, we have to sell the government on why they should care, why they should be invested, that this is good for all of us. And until you sell the people that are profiting off of it why they should be invested in this, I think that's why I remain cautiously optimistic, sometimes pessimistic, because I was having this hilariously, I was having this conversation with Rick about tipping culture in the US and how he's like, it's out of control, just pay people a living wage.
Just pay people their wage.
But it's really difficult because, as I said, not only do you have to retrain everybody's mind, you have to then increase people's salaries. When you increase people's salaries, that means the taxable amounts that are coming out of those people, but as well as the business have to pay. And then you also have, there's so much impact. But then also the people that are making higher wages, when it's a lower wage and there's an expectation that you're tipping high amounts, they're actually able to leave with a lot more money. So like, how are you going to tell people that are making good money in tips, or businesses that are profiting from forcing people into this way of working? Like, maybe I've got it all wrong because I don't understand the nuances of, I'm not involved in it. But in my brain, I think you have to retrain so much stuff. So like, in a similar mindset, how are you going to tell a profiting government and a person that has the pub code people that are tying these pubs in, so I know you're going to maybe not profit as much, but like, do you need to be a billionaire? Could you just be a millionaire?
Because that's working so well.
It's working so well everywhere. So I think that's the thing, that if they had put a lot of, like, if they had kind of thought about that as well, I'd be like, hell yeah.
That's very true. Well, there we go. Don't at us.
You can.
Tori, if people want to share their thoughts on the CAMRA report with you, where can they get hold of you?
Yeah, I don't mind it, because I do think I tried to. I genuinely don't want it to seem like I'm being super, super negative. I'm just being really picky and grouchy because I feel like I've seen one too many. It's not CAMRA's fault. It's not this report. I've just seen one too many reports
in the long line of reports that we've read.
They're the last in the long line of reports, and it was 28 pages, and it was for me, it was a slog, and I imagine that it was probably hard for them to make it any shorter. And I appreciate what they've done, so don't take this as I'm just being extra cranky, I think. But you can still have a go at me. That's fine. You can. I'm a big girl. I can deal with it. You can find me on Instagram at adventures_in_optimism. You can email me your hatred at adventuresinoptimism@gmail.com. It's fine. I don't dislike CAMRA. I'm just tired. The world's on fire and I'm tired. Yeah. And so any report I read where it's meant to be the general good. Yeah. If you want to tell Joe and I that you're shocked that Madry isn't made in Spain,
please let us know.
And that you have indeed been lied to. If you were a person that was lied to, like, I would love to hear. Like, message us. Instagram and Facebook at A Woman's Brew. You can email us at awomansbrewpodcast@gmail.com. Or if for some reason you've made it this long and you don't hate our guts by this point, we've done other report conversations. You can find them on our website of all of our content at a women'sbrewpod.beer, which is women'sbrewpod.beer. Joe has reminded me that I need to start doing that again. Yeah. And I'm the one that has to do it because she always gets the website wrong.
I always get it wrong.
Joe, if people want to have a go at you for a chance and not me,
if you have a go at me, I'll block you. So don't do it, because I have not got time to listen to people having a go at me. I've been there, done that. I'm not doing that anymore. If you'd like to share your views with me, you can find me on Instagram. I'm Love Beer Learning. I'm also on Facebook, but you're more likely to find me on Instagram. If you can have a go at me, then you can find me on Facebook.
But you better read the report first. Don't just have a go at her if you've not. Don't just listen to us. Read the report, then have a go.
Or you can come to my website, which is lovebeerlearning.co.uk, or you can email me lovebeerlearning@gmail.com.
I'm roasting because the world is on fire and this room is on fire and it's very hot, and I've got a big spotlight on me, so I'm gonna go drink some water and cool down because I'm fired
Stop being cranky.
I'm gonna stop being cranky and tired, and I feel like a toddler. I'm cranky, I'm tired, I just want some water, some juice.
Cheers.